Good morning, everyone. I hope, this is a very particular class on Mondays because, as you realize, we're using a different uh, link. Every Monday is going to be like this. While this type of phase is going on, this is the link that you're going to use on Mondays. So just to be sure, remember that only Mondays, this is the link that you will use. Welcome everyone. Today we are going to start with a new topic, a new set of content and activity. To start with, probably you have done this before, but I want to share a phrase with you. Last week and this week, you were talking about solving conflicts. And one of the phrases that I want to share with you is the following. And please feel free to share your opinion about this particular phrase and this particular thought and quote that I'm about to share with all of you. It's going to be the following. So we have in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. So, what do you think if you put it into this perspective of solving problem? Why do you think that when we solve or we're trying to solve a problem, there's the opportunity to grow as a person? Tell me, why do you think that when there's problems, people always say that you have to the opportunity to learn, to experience something new? Well, that's kind of like sometimes when we are facing any type of problems or we're having a bad day, most of the times, in times like this, when the whole world is having, you know, all of these issues in health, in economy, in education, that's the opportunity that those are the opportunities that we need to see, right? At the beginning, and it's normal to uh, see the worst, but we need to learn to think positively, right? Thinking positively gives you the opportunity to change. It doesn't mean that you're going to stop having the problem, but it means that you're going to see what can I learn from this mistake, or what can I learn from this problem? What are all the things that I'm going to be able to learn from this? And if any other problem like this happens, how and what's the experience that I'm going to acquire. So that's kind of like the message for today. Try to look for the positive in the problems. I know sometimes it's difficult, but try to. Because if you only focus on on the negative, then it's going to be difficult for you to find a solution, right? There's no uh, easy way to solve problems, but there's always a solution. That's kind of my message for today for all of you. And that's how we are going to kind of begin the class. To start with, as you know, we are going to be focusing on poems. And there are two authors that we are going to talk about today. Hopefully, we are going to be able to read all of the four poems. But if not, at least we are going to get to know these two American. Well, first one is an American writer, both of them, and we will see how the first one. I don't know if you have heard of him, Walt Whitman. And it's perfect for this thought and this quote. He focused on all of the things or all of the topics that most writers at the time didn't want to talk about or write about, and the social injustice and women, how women were treated at that time. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to share the book with you for you to get to know the two authors. As I said, the first one, this is what we are going to start, right? We are going to start Unit 2. We are going to be talking about uh, poets and their poems. And the first two authors are on the next page. I'm going to enhance it for you. The first one, as I said, is Walt Whitman. And the second one is Robert Lee Frost. I'm going to enhance it for you. Walt Whitman sorry, is an American poet. Um, Robert Frost is another poet, very, very famous because of the way they wrote their poems, right? It was kind of like a groundbreaking on how, because of the time that we're living in, how they were able to write such good and magnificent poems. Now, will anybody, I will ask for a volunteer to read this short bio of Walt Whitman. Any volunteer? Those 5 lines.
Me, teacher.
Excellent. Go ahead. Thank you.
Walt Whitman. American poet Walt Whitman developed his poetic style between 1848 and 1855. When he published Leaves of Grass, he used the everyday language to talk about a kind of subject, turning poetry into a democratic experience.
Excellent. Very good reading. Thank you very much. So we have that, and we will watch a video in a few minutes. Once we finish with Robert Lee Frost, we will see why they were famous and how the writing changed, right? And their poems are so memorable, right? If you see, he used everyday language to talk about all kinds of topics. And as we will watch in the video, we will see that they talk about environmental issues, social issues, but in a language that it was known to most of the public or the audience at that time. So that's what makes it different for these two poets. Now, do I have a volunteer for reading the next 6 lines about Robert Lee Frost, this poet?
Me, teacher.
Thank you. Go
Me.
ahead.
Robert Frost
Sorry,
spent
sorry.
from most of his life in New England, but in 1930 he moved to England, where they published A Boy's Will, and north of Boston, 1940. He was awarded for Pulitzer Prize for his poetry. In 1924, 1931, 1937, and 1943, two Mortis characters of frosty poetry and nature and isolation.
Thank you very much. So, right now we are going to go, I'm going to project and share with you a little bit more details about their lives and these 2 poems. And as I said, and as you read, and thank you for participating, great reading. They were different, right? They were these two poets, and the writing became a kind of like a breath of fresh air at the time because they were writing about different things, and the language that they were using was a language that at the time nobody used, right? So that's why they became so famous, and people liked their work because of how good the writing and the topics that they were writing about. The first is the first video that we are going to be watching. It's about Walt Whitman. Just give me a second, and I'm going to share it with you. Hopefully, everybody's going to be able to. So here it is.
Walt Whitman was the man who revolutionized American poetry. He invented a whole new poetic form, and he opened up topics to a wide range that nobody else would touch.
Walt Whitman was born on May 31st, 1819, in West Hills, New York. His parents were of modest means, and he had 7 siblings.
At the age of 11, Walt Whitman was pulled from school so that he could help the family support itself in the printing industry. As a result, Whitman was largely self-taught.
He became a voracious reader. He read widely, especially in novels.
When he was 17, Whitman turned to teaching, and his first job was in a one-room schoolhouse. He taught for 5 years, and then in 1841, he set his sights on journalism.
Walt Whitman was a volatile editor and writer. He had strong ideas about women's property rights, about immigration, and about the major issue of the day, slavery.
From 1848 to 1855, Whitman began what was to become his greatest work, Leaves of Grass. His free verse, his stitching together of encyclopedic lists, completely broke with poetic and literary convention and vastly influenced poets ever after across the world.
It began as a book of very few poems and grew to one over the years to contain almost 300 poems. Over his lifetime, he had 7 editions of the book.
During the Civil War, Whitman moved to Washington, D.C. to attend his wounded brother George. He stayed in D.C. several years, working in the paymaster's office, and volunteered visiting wounded soldiers.
When he went to the hospitals, there were limbs piled up outside. He spoke with young soldiers who had witnessed the most astonishing.
So I just want to make a pause here to, if you see, at the beginning, they are talking about how the life he lived impacted how much he wanted to know, right? It says that he was an avid reader, meaning that he enjoyed reading. And later on, he became a teacher, right? But as you can see, his environment helped him become the writer that he was, right? And now we're seeing here how going to take care of his brother also shaped the way that he wrote. So now let's continue for the second part.
Atrocities.
From his experience with the wounded during the war, he produced a small book of poems called Drum Taps. This is one of the only 2 accounts of the Civil War written by people who actually experienced it.
Whitman published 2 new collections of poems in 1870, Democratic Vistas and Passage to India.
Whitman was called the Bard of Democracy because all of his poems are based on the notion of a universal brotherhood. He thought that the possibility of America was to achieve a brotherhood that no other culture had yet been able to achieve.
Whitman suffered a stroke in 1873, leaving him partially paralyzed. He moved to Camden, New Jersey, where he remained until his death on March 26, 1892.
In his lifetime, Leaves of Grass was considered by many people to be a disgraceful book. But by the end of his life, he acquired the name the Good Gray Poet, as if America was finally ready in the later years to accept him as a poet.
Whitman never really received the attention that he deserved during his lifetime. It was only in the 20th century that we learned how to read his poetry and understand what he accomplished.
Okay, so as you can see, as the people commenting on the video and his work said, at the beginning, he was not considered a good poet, a good writer. He was after, towards the end of his life, that, critics and everybody reading his work decided that, or agreed that he was a good writer, a good poet. And one of the things, and I want you to tell me, what was one of the main reasons why he wrote those poems, or what was the purpose of writing for Walt Whitman? Can you recall from the video what they were saying? Anybody?
I remember they mentioned something about brotherhood, and I think he was taking care of his brother, and I think, well, that maybe was the reason of writing poems, because he loved so much his brother.
Excellent, great opinion. Yeah, that's what he wanted, right? He wanted his country to achieve that brotherhood, that union that according to him, the country lacked, right? And as mentioned, right, when he went into care of his brother, he was doing it because, the he was coming from a big family, but according to his biography, we can see that it was a close family, right? That they care about each other. Probably, as I said, the environment that he was living in, he wanted to replicate in society. He was misunderstood at the beginning, right? Because many consider him, because the Civil War was happening in United States, and for him to be writing about brotherhood and union for one or the other parties fighting, that was considered treason, right? Because they were fighting for different ideals, and for him to have these ideas, it was either betraying one or the other group. So that's why he was not appreciated at the beginning. And now I want to share with you the second short video, and this time it's going to be about our second poem, which is Robert Frost. We will see why his work is considered, groundbreaking and as good as it was, and it still is, right? Because remember that they were writing all of these poems and all of these work a long time ago, but they are still relevant today. So it means that what they were doing, it's relevant and important, right? And can also be applied today or studied today. That's how good the work was. Now I want to share with you our second. And, we are going to be doing the same. Pay attention. I will want your opinion about his life and how his life affected or kind of had a direct effect on how he wrote his work. Give me just a second.
Robert Frost is one of the most widely read and beloved of American poets, as well as one of his greatest.
Four-time Pulitzer Prize-winning poet, Robert Frost was a national celebrity, famous for writing poems about rural life using American colloquial speech.
Robert Frost is well known for a few poems that he managed to lodge in everyone's head. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, also Mending Wall, and The Road Not Taken, of course, is probably the most famous of all of his poems.
While most people associate Robert Frost with New England, he was born in San Francisco on March 26, 1874, and he moved to New England at age 11 after the death of his father.
Frost began writing poetry in high school, where he met his future wife, Eleanor White. He briefly attended Dartmouth, then went to Harvard in 1897, but left before graduating due to illness and his wife's pregnancy. After Harvard, Frost took up farming.
During this time, he lost 2 children to influenza, and he wasn't a very good farmer. The farm did not thrive, but his work thrived.
While Frost was able to get a few poems published, he was unable to get a book published. So in 1912, he sold his farm and took his family to live in England, hoping to find better luck with publishers.
Within a few months of arriving in England, Frost found a publisher for his poems.
The first book, A Boy's Will, was reviewed rather quickly by none other than Ezra Pound, who gave it a very favorable review.
Shortly after World War I broke out, Frost moved back to the United States and settled in Franconia, New Hampshire, where he wrote and began his long teaching career, starting off at Amherst College.
Robert Frost was really the first bard on campus. He taught at various universities, Amherst, Michigan, Harvard, Dartmouth, Middlebury.
He moved around a lot. He was in and out of universities, and as he used to call it, barding around.
By the end of his career, Robert Frost was showered with honors. He received over 40 honorary degrees. He also received the Congressional Gold Medal and 4 Pulitzer Prizes.
At the age of 86, in 1961, Robert Frost was asked to read at John Fitzgerald Kennedy's inauguration.
The land was ours before we were the land. She was our land more than 100 years before we were her people.
At the time, it was as much an honor for Kennedy as it was for Frost.
Robert Frost died in Boston, Massachusetts at the age of 89 on January 29, 1963. Poetic to the end, Frost's tombstone read, "I had a lover's quarrel with the world."
When Amherst College built the Robert Frost Library, Kennedy agreed to give the keynote address, and it was one of the great speeches of his presidency. In that speech, Kennedy wrote, "When power corrupts, poetry cleanses." He was thinking very much of Robert Frost as a poet who spoke truth to power.
Robert
Okay, let's discuss about Robert Frost. How or what are the major things that you take away from his life or the way he was known? Will anybody like to share opinions? What do you think that make this particular writer different from the others based on what was said? Volunteer?
I see first he started like, well, he had difficulties because first he had a family and he didn't finish the university, and also he wasn't a good farmer. So, but then when he went to England, he had an opportunity, and from that point, he became a very famous poet.
Excellent. Yes, right. And we can see that he wrote about, country life, right? About rural areas of his country. Something that, as we watch on the video, something that was not done at the time, and not many poets were doing that with their work, and that's what, in some way, helped him, right? Because as Carla was saying, right, he tried to become a farmer. It didn't work. Then some of his poems were published, but he didn't have the same luck with his book, right? And he looked for the opportunity in another country, and in that country, it worked, right? He was published, and that's when his success begun, right? That's how he was able to accomplish all of the things that he did. He won the Pulitzer Prize 4 times, as it was said there, and he became something kind of like a role model, because after he came back to the United States, he became a teacher, right? And one of the things that he was doing was teaching younger generations on how to improve their writing skills. So now we are going to move on, and we have time to read one of the poems. If we go to page 34, we are going to be reading Miracles by Walt Whitman. I'm going to start sharing with you in a second. Give me just a minute. Okay, hopefully everybody is able to see my screen. We have, do I have a volunteer to read it? Or just the first paragraph? I know it's long, but do we have a volunteer to read the first part?
I'm teacher.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Why who makes much of miracle? As to me, I count of nothing else but miracles, whether I walk the streets of Manhattan or dark my side over the roof of houses toward the sky, or wear with naked feet along the beach, just in the edge of the water, or stand under the trees in the woods, or talk be day with anyone I love, or sleep in the bed at night with anyone love.
Excellent. Thank you. Will anybody like to read the second part until farmers? A volunteer, please. Any? Or do I call from the list? Volunteer, please. We are just going to read that second part and we are going to be discussing. Please, anybody? Or do I choose? Okay, I'm going to choose from the list. Let's see. Amy, would you like to read, please? Amy Castillo, would you like to read the second paragraph, please?
Sure.
Yeah?
Me.
You want to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Or sit at table at dinner with my mother. Or look at a stranger of city mid reading in the car. Or watching honey bees burst around the height of summer of her afternoon. Or animals fielding in their finds. Or birds or the wonderfulness of insects in the air, or the wonderfulness on the sun down, or of a star shining so kid and burns, or the exquisite delicate this cause be, or the new moon in spring, or where I gone among those I like best, and that like be best mentioned, boament, ferment, or among the savants, or to the sorry, or to the opera, or string it along with a log at the movers meant of a machinery. On bear how children at their sport, or the admirable seat or of their perfect old man, or their perfect old man woman, or the sick is hospital, or they are carried or to burial, or honest eyes and figure in their glass. There's with their race on one and all are to me miracles. They're wholly referring yet each distinct and in this place. Sorry for my pronunciation.
No, that's fine. It was really good. Don't worry. And that's how we improve, right? So thank you for reading. Excellent reading.
Thank you.
So we have just on the first part, if you see the vocabulary, there are some words that probably are new, but overall, and we haven't finished reading, overall, he's using everyday vocabulary that, and that's what he was known for, right? Vocabulary that people could understand, and that it was easy for him to convey his purpose and his ideas, right? And we have the poem is the title is Miracles, right? And it says, while who makes much of a miracle, right? He's questioning from the beginning, he's questioning, right? And that's one of the things that he was known for, because remember that his purpose was for his country to be united. So he was kind of like this positive poet, probably not writing about positive things, but he wanted to go beyond that and try to, at the end of each of his work, to try to give a message of unity, and that's what you will see in this particular um, poem. And the last part says, "To me, every hour of the light in the dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with the same. Every foot of the interior swarms with the same. Every spear of grass, the frames, the limbs, the organs of men and women, and all of that concerns them. All these, to me, are unspeakably perfect miracles." So if you see, before towards the end of his poem, he's questioning, right? At the beginning, he's questioning what a miracle is, or who deserves a miracle. And towards the end of his poem, he's talking about, well, everything is a miracle, right? The grass, the people, men and women, everything that you have on earth should be considered a miracle, right? And that's the positive side that it was talked about, or that was a characteristic of Walt Whitman, right? His ideals and the way that he wanted to give this positive message of union and brotherhood, as it said, right? And then towards the last part of the poem, we have, "To me, the sea is a continual miracle. The fishes that swim, the rocks, the motion, the waves, the ships with men in them. What a stranger miracle are there." So if you see, we see everyday vocabulary with something that probably not many poems at the time question, right? Probably, and as you know, poets most of the time try to talk about love and hate and all of those feelings. And this is not that he's not giving you a sense or trying to make you feel some type of way or give you an emotion, but he's trying to do it with a different topic or in a different way, right? You're questioning yourself, you're thinking about what he's talking about, but he does it in a very particular way, very, very personal, right? So I don't know if there are any opinions about this poem, or any questions or any doubts about this particular poem. Anybody? Questions or doubts? No? Okay. So if you see, we're going to stop here in terms of the class. Next class, we are going to continue reading about Whitman's work, but this time it's going to be his second poem. We have two poems for each of the authors. Next class, we are going to be reading the one left for Walt Whitman, and we are going to be reading the two for Robert Lee Frost. So I will ask your participation for the next class and your opinions. If you want to go ahead and read ahead from the next class, So you're able to participate more, or you have questions about vocabulary or any other theme, you can go ahead and do that. Remember that the pages are from 34 to 37. You're going to find the poems right there. And we are going to be working in the exercises. I don't know if there are any questions or any doubts.
No, teacher.
No, teacher.
No,
No.
teacher.
Okay, hopefully in next class we can read a little bit more and share uh, our opinions more. So I will thank everybody for participating and have an amazing rest of the day. I will see you in the next class. Bye everyone. Take care of
Thank you,
yourselves.
teacher.
Bye,
Thank you,
teacher.
teacher.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank
Bye.
Bye.
you, teacher. Bye.
Bye. Take care of yourselves. Bye.
Thank you.